think it'll send you a thing to say.
Yep, got that.
All right. We look, get our hair down. Not that I ever end up posting it on the video anyway. I just take the audio out of it usually, but we'll have it just in case.
Yeah.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of Real Talk with Rach. I'm sorry for the extended break, but life got a little crazy, and I really only want to bring to you the topics that I feel super passionate about and not just have to sit there and listen to the sound of my voice. This week, we are going to talk all things body image and diet culture. I have a really special guest with me today who is going to give us some amazing tips on how to have a more healthy relationship with food. Today, we have Leanne. She is a food freedom coach with 17 years experience as a nutritionist. Leanne runs a business that is called Rewire Your Brain to stop emotional and binge eating without dieting, which sounds absolutely fabulous to me. Welcome to the podcast, Leanne.
Oh, thanks so much, Rach. I'm very happy to be here.
Before we get started on asking Leanne a few questions, I thought that perhaps I would go over a little bit about my body image issues. I shouldn't say issues, but just a little bit about me personally. I would like to point out at this stage that I don't consider myself to have any real body image issues, but a lot of us women go through these struggles daily, and I wanted to point out a few things that might resonate with some other people, especially now that I've gotten a little bit older. Menopause is now on the cards, and I've had a couple of children, and I think things really change as you get older. I am aware that there are people who are suffering some real mental illnesses in this space, and I don't want to take away the seriousness of their struggles. So during my childhood at school, I was one of those kids who got picked on for being skinny. I was called a surfboard, a praying mantis, lots of really unfortunate things that no child ever dreams of being called. And I think that because it has always been socially acceptable for you to comment on people's weight if they are skinny, but I think that we're starting to get, hopefully, down that track where commenting on people's weight and their personal appearance in no shape is really called for or warranted or necessary. So, but I do think that because I was skinny and I wasn't overweight, people thought that it was okay to talk on that, but it still really hit home. That's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about how all that has kind of changed ever since my maybe mid to late 30s, which is when I had my first baby, is when things started to change. And when I say change, when I look back now on photos of me pregnant or after having a baby, there was absolutely nothing to complain about. Sorry for my language, but isn't it funny how we look back on ourselves? It's not even necessarily that long ago, but maybe say 5 years ago, when we were thinking that we weren't looking fantastic, and we're like, oh my God, I would love to look like that now. I also wanted to touch base. I think things are changing a little bit more now with social media, obviously, although it has always been, body image and being thin has always been sort of shoved in your face with magazines and TV shows and things like that. But obviously social media is makes things a lot more difficult and a lot more in your face, and we're on there all the time. So it's definitely it's like when you buy a new car, it seems to be everywhere. Women are always obsessed with their body image. Every ad that comes on is about weight loss or shapes or getting your pre-baby body back. And what the hell is wrong with the body that you've got? You just gave birth to a child. We should be embracing that and celebrating that. There's always workout equipment. There's always a Weight Watchers ad or Light and Easy and things like that. And I think that sometimes we think about ourselves as being directly, our self-worth goes with our how we look. People would probably be really shocked to know that I literally spend about 80% of my day worrying about the size of my stomach. We all have a thing, and my stomach is my issue. I get really grossed out when I look at myself in the mirror or in photos. I can't even fathom the thought of trying on new clothes, which is probably why I end up buying things online and then I get them and they don't fit me. And then I spiral into this whole self-sabotage thing. And then that's when I'll open up a bottle of wine because that will stop me from thinking. And then I wake up anxious and angry at myself for consuming an extra 600 to 1200 calories. You do the maths on that. And then I'll start Googling how to lose 5 kilos in 5 minutes, and we think about doing things drastically and unnecessary to fit into a social mode. Can't remember what society thinks we should look like anyway. So enough about me. We weren't here just to talk about me, but like I said, I wanted to tell my story a little bit so that I maybe will resonate with some other people. I'd like to throw over a few questions to Leanne now, and just maybe a little bit more about yourself and what you led to becoming so involved with nutrition and in particular helping women.
Oh, thanks, Rach, and thanks for sharing your story. I love the way you talk and share your experience, and I'm sure there's so many women watching this that can totally resonate with what you're saying. I know I've got lots of friends who would definitely resonate and experiencing the same thing. So I became a nutritionist I went back to uni at 24 because I was battling with bulimia and binge eating. So I wanted to become a dietitian to work out what the hell was wrong with me and how to fix it before anyone else would find out about it. Had a lot of shame and guilt around it. I think my parents knew at that point, and I'd tried to get help with different psychologists and things, but nothing was really working for me. So I thought, right, I'll take it into my own hands. And I learned a lot about nutrition then. Obviously, I did a dietetics degree, but then I sort of took the holistic approach after that because I found that just basically a lot of the things, the medical side of things wasn't in line with my philosophy, I suppose. And so that's why I call myself a nutritionist rather than a dietitian. So your question, so what led me to be a nutritionist and what do I do?
What was the catalyst that started you to want to, you mentioned that you were having a few issues yourself, and you were finding that the normal ways of going about that weren't really working for you. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I was just trying every diet under the sun. I just thought I needed more willpower to stop the binge eating at night.
Yeah.
But now I know that was what was actually perpetuating it. So it was the restriction that was going on and trying to be skinny all the time and eating as little as possible during the day was making me come home and binge at night. So when I went back to uni and, learned dietetics, it was sort of a double-edged sword. You became very, I ate sort of 3 healthy meals a day, but you did become very obsessive because you had to enter everything into all the computer systems to analyze every single nutrient, and everyone was talking about it, and you'd be comparing each other's lunchbox at lunchtime, and everyone was losing weight, and it was all very competitive, and all this unspoken stuff going on. So I learned how to nourish my body better, and I learned what was more balanced eating. But then I found just trying to eat the meals too perfectly all the time became, like I lost a lot of weight in sort of year 3, and then I battled to keep that off. And there was binging and bulimia during that time. I might eat 2 biscuits, but I'd bring it up again because I thought, I've stuffed it up now. I can't put on weight. I've got to stay this weight, because people would give me compliments because I was skinny, So that was pressure. And as you said before about, mentioned earlier about, commenting on people's bodies, people think they're doing a nice thing, but it's not helpful sometimes because it adds a lot of pressure. And you think, oh, what did you think of me before then if I didn't, Yeah. So,
I think the restrictions of what you mentioned around, I think that's a really important point for us to make, is a lot of the times I kind of think that I do agree with having kind of like a bit of it, not a schedule, but the balance that you were talking about. But that real restrictiveness is what we put all our hopes on to go, okay, this is all I can have. And when we don't get to that point, we crumble.
Yeah, it makes you feel not good enough.
Yeah.
You feel like you never get there, and if you don't do it perfect, you're not good enough, because these diet
What's
companies.
the point, right? What's the point? If I can't stick to this, then what's the
Hmm,
point?
yeah, exactly. May as well just give up.
Yeah.
So it tends to be like, they market it like, if you follow this perfectly, you will lose weight. So you blame yourself. And they say it's the only industry in the world where the customer blames themselves when the product doesn't work, instead of blaming the company.
Yes,
So
so true.
yeah, it's designed for us to feel like, oh, but I just need more willpower. I'm weak, or I'm a failure. And then, so every time you fail a diet, you want to go back for more because you've lost control again. So then you want to get control again by having these strict boundaries again. But then the same thing happens again. So every time you do that, it's like this learned helplessness and this powerlessness that keeps getting embedded into you. And then it's like, yeah, what's the point? I can't do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so with your business, when you have somebody that wants to join and have you help coach them, what are some of the first things that you will go through before you start moving forward?
Sure. So I will meet with them on Zoom, and we do a call where I need to get really clear if we're a good fit to work together, basically. So we'll talk about and really establish exactly what's going on with their eating and what's going through their mind about, their body, and kind of where that's coming from too. And we sort of go a bit deeper and into how they're actually feeling in their emotions, because some people not aware of what's going on. They don't have a lot of clarity or understanding around it. So we kind of, I'd give them clarity about what's going on, a little bit of insight, and then we sort of establish whether it's what I do. If they're battling from emotional overeating or binge eating, for example, that's what I do. I work with women to help rewire their brain to break that habit. So we sort of, once we establish that we're a good fit to work together, then there's kind of a process that we do after that.
Yeah, you mentioned before when we were chatting that you've got we both scratched our head at the same time then.
I know. Like a mirror effect.
You've got like you've got like we actually study that in counseling and psychology, that it's a mimicking thing that you can do to build rapport with people when you're actually having a
Oh,
counseling session with them. So it's actually really
okay.
interesting that we both just did that.
Yeah.
You mentioned that there was like a 7 sort of step process that you go through
Mm,
and to establish. And I think that when you mentioned before about emotional and binge eating, I think most is a really broad thing, but I think as
mm,
far as women are concerned, we're a little bit wired to emotionally eat or emotionally not eat. Um,
yeah.
and yeah, to that binging thing comes in when we try to restrict ourselves a little bit too much.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we only binge on the foods we restrict. So
Yeah,
it's when
yeah.
you think a food is
Imagine if we just
bad.
binged on the good food.
Yeah, exactly.
That
Yeah.
probably wouldn't give us that feeling of what else we were talking a little bit before about, as well as about that instant gratitude, or that
The
getting
instant
getting
gratification,
yeah
like the quick hit. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
if you could just run over a couple of those 7 steps that you go through, what are just a couple of those?
Yeah, sure. So we're kind of looking at if there's anything physiologically in the body that's driving them to binge, because sometimes there's imbalances in gut health, or there's food cravings happening for a reason. So we look at what's happening there and how they're eating and things like that. But I tend not to focus too much on diet, because that can be very triggering for someone who
Mm,
is coming from a diet binge background. It's just kind of feels like it's a diet again. So it's really a process of learning how to nourish and regulate the hormones, blood sugar levels, moods, emotions, all of those things, in order to prevent the cravings, to make your job easier to break free from the habit of binge eating. So we look at the physiological stuff to start with, and then we look at all the belief systems and all the judgments that you have around food as good or bad or right or wrong, and about your body and where all of those come from. We sort of go a bit deeper, because these things get quite ingrained from when we're younger, and just
Mm,
from living in a society drenched in diet culture. Everybody's talking about diets and food and bodies all the time, and
yep.
having to look a certain way. As you said, there's so much pressure on mums these days, isn't there?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And a lot of those ads come on crazily, or probably strategically, when you're breastfeeding in the middle of the night. So I remember
Oh,
when my kids were young, I would get up and feed them in the middle of the night and just whack the television on, and it would be exercise equipment and all about weight loss and fitness and bodies and all of that. And you'd just be sitting there going, I mean,
oh,
I should have changed the channel, but sometimes you kind of get caught up. You get caught up in that stuff, and then you start to really get
yeah.
down on yourself. Like another thing we mentioned before when we were chatting just before we pressed record, um, really focus. Why wasn't I focusing on what my body has just done?
Yeah.
And you were talking a little bit before about starting to talk to your body and yourself in a bit more of a positive way.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so as far as that goes, as far as, having a positive outlook on your own body or body image in general, is to, yeah, focus on how you feel and what your body can do. And as you said, you've just had a baby, that's a
Mm.
pretty amazing thing that the female human body can do. So it's appreciating that, that creative intelligence of the body, and what your body can do, even as we were talking earlier about just being able to get yourself into weird shapes at yoga, or to be able to surf, or whatever performance goal that you have, maybe lifting weights or
Mm.
something else. Focus on what you can do, and on performance goals is really good, rather than what your body actually looks like. It's just focusing on how it feels more than anything else.
Yeah, yeah. So we do a little bit of that at the gym as well. We like to focus on like that, like you said, performance things like I can lift this much, or I can squat this much, or like you said, you can now do some new poses with yoga, and you're learning to surf. And
Mm.
we were also talking about how we can congratulate our body that I never thought of doing any of this stuff, but I really didn't you mentioned it earlier. I really didn't feel like I'm tired, and I didn't feel like getting up today, but look at my body getting me up and getting out there, and
Yeah.
going to work or going for a walk or whatever the little things might be. Is like, oh, I was a bit harsh on you last night with having a few drinks, or eating a bit too much, but look at you getting up and walking me around. I feel like a champion.
Yeah, absolutely. And, being stressed, running around, picking kids up and getting through the workday and doing everything you've got to do. Like, your body doesn't necessarily want to do that. It actually needs rest half the time, or it needs nourishment. And then we skip lunch and have another coffee instead.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
just
guilty.
acknowledging, like, yeah, it's
I'm
easy
so
to do, isn't
guilty of the coffee thing as well. And yeah, because and it's I think it's a habit that I've established as well. Is that I mean, at the moment I'm trying to drink less, so I'm forgiving myself for having maybe a few extra coffees, because I want to start creating different habits. But it's not to say I want to replace that with something else, but just
it?
you know creating new habits, I think, is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And coffee is actually very liver cleansing, just
Yeah,
on a positive note.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, I do tell myself that at the same time.
Yeah. If it makes you
And
feel
it's
any better, I never drank coffee until like last year, and it's only the last few months I've drinking it daily. Like
Yeah, right.
yeah, not a great
I
one to
didn't
start,
drink
but I
it. I
love it.
didn't. Yeah, same. I didn't drink it at all until I was about 30, and then I started working in a corporate office, and
Mm,
that's just what you do in a corporate office. Everybody goes down to the coffee shop a couple of times a day or before work, and
yeah.
it's a real culture. And it's just like the Friday night drinks and things like that. So
Mm,
yeah, to be honest, I do miss those corporate Friday those corporate Friday drinks. They were always
yeah.
a bit of fun. Which brings me to what are your tips for getting through the weekend without? Because I know for me particularly, and I know probably there's a lot of people that are the same. You're really good Monday to Thursday, and then things start to spiral out of control over the weekend. Do you have any tips on how to try to stay on track, or to not beat yourself up over the weekend and sort of slip into a bit of a negative cycle?
Yeah, sure. And so, for those of you who are watching who do battle with emotional overeating or binge eating, it's all about having, and if you are stuck in that, you may need help with this. It's not going to be just as easy for some people, but for some general tips, like it's adding more of those playful foods in during the week when you actually feel like it. Like for myself, I used to have my cheat day on a Sunday. And when I look back, it's like it was almost like a planned binge. I didn't
Mm,
even feel like some of the foods I was eating, or sometimes I'd be hungover and I didn't. I just eat everything, and then it'd sort of transpire into worrying about how the week was going to go, and then the late night binge on a Sunday would sort of get out of control, and then my week wouldn't start on a good note. So, and that was because I was so restrictive leading up to that Sunday. I wasn't allowed to have any of those foods, only on a
mm,
Sunday. So it was really quite abusive to my body when I think about it, because often I didn't even feel like that, but that was the only day I was allowed to have it, so I'd have it anyway.
mm,
So it's really weaving in those playful foods when you actually feel like it. What if you want chocolate on a Wednesday morning and it's not a Sunday?
mm.
What if you like pizza on a Tuesday night, not a Friday night, or fish and
Yep,
chips, or whatever it is? So
yep,
it's really listening to your body. And if you are battling with your eating, you may not be totally aware of how your body feels and what you need, but it's getting really connected with yourself and allowing those foods when you truly feel like them, because otherwise that's where all the confusion starts, and we lose the trust we have in our body when we're too busy following a diet plan and not actually eating what our body feels like at the time, or the amount that it feels like. Then all this confusion starts to happen about how to eat, because it's not making you feel good, and it's creating more eating problems. So then it's like, well, I don't even know how to eat anymore.
yeah, yep,
Yeah, being more gentle and kind during the week and adding those foods in, having more self-compassion around your eating, having, I always say, fluidity and flexibility around your eating. Intuitive eating is about nourishing your body adequately, and we all need to have certain nutrients and vitamins in our body so that our brains and our organs work properly. So we need to eat healthy, and eating intuitively is healthier than a diet, because we're actually getting enough nourishment, whereas strict diets not so much. So you get to the weekend and your body is usually physically deprived, like it's
yep.
actually hasn't had enough energy or nutrition. And there's the stress, because when you go on a strict diet, it actually triggers adrenaline and cortisol, which also contribute to the urges to binge, which actually drive you to binge, because your brain senses a starvation and it's trying to keep you alive, so it drives
Hmm.
you to eat more than usual. So there's
Yeah,
all
it's
that
it's all
brain
it's
science
so
behind
much
it.
information, isn't there? There's so much psychology towards it, and this is what I was saying to you earlier. I if I sort of restrict myself to not having a drink, and then I'll get to Friday and I'll go down to the bottle shop and I'll buy all of the bottles and have more than what I probably need. Whereas if I just let myself have a glass here and there through the week, I probably wouldn't feel the need to shock my
Yeah.
body into doing that. Same with, if you, I'm going to have a whole pizza to myself on Sunday. Whereas if you maybe had a slice here and there through the week,
Yeah.
your brain wouldn't be just, gagging to get to that Sunday. And even like you said, even if you might not feel like it, this happened to me last weekend. We went and got a pizza for the kids and I to share, and I ended up eating two pieces more than what I probably wanted, just because I'd allowed myself to have it at that point.
Yes.
So there's some really important tips that you raised to just have that intuitive throughout the
Mm,
week, so that you're not
mm,
holding off to, you know,
yeah.
to punish yourself on the weekends, or not punish yourself. You're punishing yourself during the week to let yourself free on the weekends, when we really should just be doing it,
Yeah, that
throughout the week.
escapism is happening. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's the can be rebellion, or it's a rebound effect, or it's escapism, or it's all too hard and you're actually just really
Mm.
hungry, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the judgment of food as well as good or bad too. Because if you think pizza's bad or chocolate's bad, then you will restrict on it. And then when you do have it, it's like this last supper eating that happens, because your brain goes, "Oh my God, she's never going to let me eat that again. So we have to eat as
Mm.
much as we can now." So
Yeah, it's
it's all of
so
that. The brain
interesting.
senses all of that.
And they're all things that we just don't think of, because we want, like, when I was I'll do that late night Googling, how do I lose 5 kilos in, God, some of the stuff that comes up when you do that, by the way, there's some YouTube clips of just saying, just don't eat for, it's just, it's crazy some of the stuff that's out there, and people just go along with it and think that that's what's going to change everything and help them long term, when we know that those diets are just, they're not sustainable. So what would you say some of the biggest myths around weight loss would be, or diet culture more,
So the thing that I see, pretty much every single client, say 99% of clients that come to me have been intermittent fasting.
Okay.
And they're battling with binge eating. Like I would almost say every single person, and cutting carbs as well, things like that. But fasting is a big one. And because there is a lot of scientific evidence around it that it is good for your body, but not if you're an emotional eater or a binge eater. And most people have some sort of emotional attachment to some food. So it can just cause, some people would really control it and not let the binge happen if they're really stuck in the diet mentality like that. Like I used to control it a lot as well, but then I would lose control and binge sometimes. So the fasting definitely, and there's a whole lot of research, there's thousands of research studies proving that fasting or dieting and restricting food triggers binge eating. It actually causes the disorder, and it causes anorexia as well.
Yeah, wow. And tell us that we can have some carbs.
Absolutely. Your body needs carbs. Your body needs carbs, but obviously it's out of balance. You wouldn't be getting enough protein and vegetables and all the other nutrients that your body needs if you're just living on risotto and big plates of pasta every day. Like, it's got to be balanced. But there's nothing wrong with having a bowl of pasta or eating a sandwich or having some cereal. It's just looking at the balance over the day from a nutritional perspective and going, okay, is this good for my body? Am I getting enough nutrition here?
Yeah. And you were mentioning before about focusing a lot more on how these foods make your body feel rather than how they're going to make them look. And I think that's so my next question was, what are some of the biggest tips that you've got on maintaining a healthy relationship with eating? And I think for me, that's one of the things that I've taken from my chats with you is concentrating on how these foods make my body feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I mentioned earlier, Rach, how some people, if you are watching and you are battling with binge eating in a quite a clinical way, then you may not know how foods make you feel. Because binge eating is about cutting off your awareness. We're subconsciously not wanting to feel anything. We're wanting to numb out and not be aware. So that includes disconnection to your body. People often avoid their body. They don't want to know about it. So it's developing that connection again. That's really important. So you do know how foods make you feel. You know how you feel. Like fish and chips is a good one. People, if they don't know how other foods make them feel, they'll often notice, oh yeah, I don't feel good if I overeat on fish and chips, for example, or pizza maybe. So it's noticing how it feels, and it's that process of building up your self-worth so that you feel good about yourself and you actually want to feel good, and you're choosing foods that are going to make you feel good, that you also enjoy and are delicious for you, but it's wanting to feel good in your body is the focus.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, we're not saying that you can't have those things. It's just say if you did have a bit of fish and chips on a Tuesday when you haven't normally scheduled it, then you're probably not going to gorge yourself on it like you would do on your Sunday if your Sunday was, your cheat day or your treat day or whatever it is that you want to call it. And I think you also mentioned about being careful about calling foods good and bad foods, like the way that we talk about food and the way that we talk about ourselves. Are some really good tips that I've got from you from our chats as well.
Yeah, self-compassion is huge, and that's often something people have to learn as well, because we're so used to judging ourselves. That negative self-talk's always there, isn't it?
It's such a new thing, isn't it? And that comes down to being a mum, being learning how to surf, learning how to do yoga, just any kind of learning new things. We do have that negative self-talk. So I've got some really great tips from you today that I'm going to love sharing with anyone who is listening. And I thank you so much for giving us your time and your knowledge. And if anyone wants to delve deeper in with Leanne, I will leave the link on both the podcast, and I think I'm going to upload this to YouTube as well. And I'm sure that she would be more than happy to help you on your journey of eating, more positively, shall we call it?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's my passion. It's my absolute passion because I've battled with this myself.
Yeah.
Now I feel like I'm living my purpose and I just want to help as many women as possible with
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
that's
Healthy
awesome. You can see
relationship.
that. I can feel that. I can feel that from you, and in all of your energy from your posts and all of that sort of thing. I can feel that from you. And what a real gratifying thing for you to be able to find what your purpose is. It's a really nice feeling.
Very lucky. Yeah. Love
Yeah.
it.
Thanks so much, Leanne. And
Thanks,
perhaps we'll
Rach.
catch up again and do some other stuff down the track.
Absolutely love to.